back to JKLIVE Live. What a discussion. I see your questions and comments coming in thick and fast. We are with Homa Bay Senator Moses Kajwang, who's also the chairman of the Devolution Committee, and former Majority Whip, Murang'a County Senator Irungu Kangata. Gentlemen, I asked you earlier on, Senator Kajwang, let me ask you this. Referendum this year, yes or no? Is it on? Referendum.
It is possible. It is possible because it's possible that Parliament can be done with the bill by May, and thereafter the referendum can be held.
If not, if it's delayed till next year, does that mean handshake is over?
If it is delayed, then there could be certain provisions of the BBI that might not be implemented before the next elections. I think there are those experts who have argued that even the creation of the 70 additional constituencies ought to be done at least 1 year to the next election. And so if the people who in their sovereign power pass the BBI bill as it is and it becomes law, the question would be where the people have overwhelmingly said that this is what we want, do those other restrictions apply? But I think that will be a conversation for legal experts at that point in time. The straightforward answer is that we are going to have a referendum. The provisions in and the proposals and the amendments to the Constitution are the ones that have to be taken to a referendum. And I am confident that by the month of May, Parliament will be done with this. Kangata alluded to some disquiet on the contents of the BBI draft. And Parliament has decided that the committees of the Senate and the National Assembly that are sitting jointly right now to look at that draft bill and to bring a report to the House, we have given them time. You know, when a bill comes for first reading, it is sent to a committee. When it comes for second reading, it is expected that the committee will have done its report, so that that report can persuade the House to take a certain direction. But there are many cases where we have gone into second reading without a committee report. But because this is a very important matter, it is the first time we are amending the Constitution through a public, a popular initiative. I think it is just good order and good manners to allow the Justice and Legal Affairs committees of the two houses to bring a report. Now, that report, and this has been the wrong impression that has been given to Kenyans, the committee has got no power to amend the draft bill.
Right.
It can only make recommendations. And those recommendations can only be dealt with at the third reading stage. And it can only be done on the consensus and concurrence of the entire House. Even if this committee was to say that we omit the schedule with 70 constituencies, even if it was to say that we omit the ombudsman, even if it was to say that we strike out the prime minister, that can only be a report that can be used to persuade the House, but it is not conclusive. It is Kangata and I who will exercise our vote and to say that we agree with the committee or we agree with the people who brought this bill to the House.
Senator Kangata, May is in 2 weeks. Is that realistic?
No, and for me it will be very immoral for the political class to push for a referendum anytime this year. Very morally wrong. Why? People are dying. People are crying. For the last 2 weeks, I've gone to Murang'a to bury COVID-19 victims, I think almost 10 times. My friends have passed on. People who have been so very important to Murang'a society have passed on. On this Saturday, I'm going to bury a very prominent figure in Kandara constituency. So, when you look at such kind of a situation, if our elites, our political class, have conscience, they have that moral cause, they would definitely shove this issue and say, okay, fine, let us fight this pandemic, then thereafter we'll deal with the issue of BBI. Why? Because number one, it will entail usage of resources. IBC is on record saying they need 14 billion to conduct a referendum. That 14 billion is enough to purchase enough vaccines to give to all Kenyans. After that, we shall then start incurring billions of shillings to sustain some of the new offices that are going to be created by BBI and the expansion of government, which will accrue after BBI.
So you're saying put BBI on hold?
Yeah, hold.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, hold.
Put it on ice?
Yeah, please, surely. You may have, I don't know, whatever. And by the way, remember, constitutional review, from where I sit, it ought to have something called the grand norm. That is, the basic norm that inspires the change of that constitution. What triggers that change? And for me, I can't see it. It is something we can wait up to 2022. Or, by the way, they can say, okay, fine, look at this proposal of BBI. Out of all those proposals, it is only one legally requiring a referendum. The rest can pass through Parliament, and we are done. Yeah, why can't we also consider that proposal? So that we say, if we are going for referendum because of only one, which is touching on what we call protected clauses of the Constitution, then that one will handle it in 2022. If you want, I don't know what, you want this, pass it through Parliament. Let me give you a good example. One of the BBI proposal is to introduce World Development Fund bill. Mm-hmm. That was my proposal. I even crafted a law. It was passed by Senate. When it went to the National Assembly, it died. In fact, we are supposed to go for something called mediation. So the BBI proponent should say, okay, fine, we are pushing for World Development Fund. They go and talk to the leader of the majority at the National Assembly. They talk to the whip. We pass that one.
By the way, why did it die?
The National Assembly didn't support it. So it was taken to what we call mediation. Mm-hmm. So it is still there, by the way, it's still active. So what we can say, instead of using these billions of shillings to take this issue to the referendum, we buy vaccines, then we go to Parliament and we pass Kangata's bill, and then you have World Development Fund. Same way with other proposals which are contained about the constituency, we talk to IBC. Under the Constitution is the legal mandate of the IBC to delineate constituencies. And this is the year for doing that constitutionally. So what they do, they talk to IBC, they bring a report, we delineate new constituencies, we proceed with life. That way, you achieve what you want. On the other hand, you ensure you don't use money at a time when Kenyans are dying, are suffering.
So, Jakajwang,
you see, I generally agree with some of the things Kangata is saying. We didn't expect that we'd be having the third wave. Mm-hmm. And when all these things started, we didn't even anticipate that we're going to have COVID. If you go into a referendum, there is a period where you have to popularize the bill, and there'll be the no and the yes side. And it is a campaign. And even on the day of voting for it, there'll be queues and things like those, which could be seen as super spreaders. Depending on the situation the country is in, and God forbid, we are praying that this third wave is a final wave. If we are able to flatten the curve, then I want to insist that the processes of governance, the processes of democratic participation must be allowed to continue. Because if that argument is stretched, one would argue that we cannot do an election because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. There are nations that have held elections. The United States did elections at a point when there was a serious spike even in infections. We've seen Tanzania, we've seen Burundi, we've seen Uganda, and several other countries. It is well established, and it is a good practice that the democratic processes and the systems and processes of participation of citizens should continue. And that is why even Parliament, despite the pandemic, Parliament is still required and is still called upon to sit. I do pray that we don't have a fourth, fifth wave. If this is a final wave, and it's only God who knows, because this is now beyond Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. If the waves persist into the year, I don't think it would be responsible to do things that can increase the risks to Kenyans. But things remaining constant, those ideas that Kangata is having, we hope that the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee will bring those ideas to Parliament and we consider, even though I'm convinced that there's more than one provision that requires to go back to the referendum, because there are issues to do with the Bill of Rights, and there are issues to do with the powers and functions of Parliament, and there are issues that touch on the judiciary, which the people need to take a position on.
What about this thing they call a no contest referendum? That's what they're insisting on, no contest.
It's a fallacy. It's a fallacy. A referendum, you put a question. constitution, and people either agree or disagree with it. I think when they say non-contested, unfortunately, they've really made it a very small thing. For the Tanga team, non-contested means that William Ruto is in the room. And I think sometimes there's some sense of jealousy when these other boys are meeting and he's left alone with Kangata and Rigathi on the side. So for them, non-contested means that Ruto is also in it. And it's not about personal feelings and involvement. What we must ask ourselves, and I wish that the contest was a principled contest rather than a personality contest. There was a group that came up. I think they were called Linda Katiba. And they were making some fairly, nice arguments on issues and on contents of the draft bill. But they also went separate ways. I think some found their ways in Tanga, and others came back to the handshake fold. But there's nothing like an uncontested referendum. You can have an uncontested election like the one for Senator Abdul in Garissa. Mm-hmm. But a referendum must have two questions.
No,
must have a yes or a no.
Can I define what we mean when
since you've just gotten your PhD in law, why don't you just tell us?
1963, we had a new constitution. It was not contested on the basis all major political players were involved. Remember the Lancaster 1, Lancaster 2. That is what we call an uncontested referendum or the constitutional change. Then we had the 1969 second Kenyan constitution, which collated all constitutional amendments between 1963 to 1969. That was a contested constitutional review debate. Remember, there were people even who were arrested, who were harassed when they opposed that process. Remember that?
Yes.
And in fact, some of the draconian constitutional provisions that bedeviled Kenya, they were inserted that time. A good example, remember, they killed Senate in 1964, then it was included in 1969 constitution. They abolished devolution. So you see? So the point is, whenever you have a contested constitutional review process, you create problems. Then we have the 2010. That was also basically a non-contested referendum. Why? Because all major players were involved in that process. By the way, if you recall very well,
there was a no side.
There was no, there was. No, by Ruto, but I can tell you that happened after the conferences. But the conferences, everyone was given an opportunity to appear and give representation. As to whether some other players will go and say no, that's obvious. But the process must be accommodative. Give all major political players an opportunity to be heard. But that does not necessarily mean there will be a consensus. But at least give them a hearing, involve them in the process. But then when you weaponize, you now want to make that process as if there is us versus them. That is what you are returning this country to 1969 constitutional making process. It will not be fair. It will create problems. And I'm not convinced BBI process was sufficiently consultative. It was not.
Okay. But Jeff...
go on. As I go to the magic word, go on. Senator.
You see, we should not bring in insomnia, political insomnia. When I read Kangata's letter about the BBI, he said BBI is great, especially for the Mount Kenya region. It has benefits and it is very easy to sell. In fact, the only problem he had was the use of the provincial administration in popularizing the BBI. They wanted the political class to be in control, which I think I agree with, because this is a political process. It cannot be something that is driven by national government administration officers. I am surprised that today, just a few, not too long ago, because that letter was in January, that a lot of things have now come up to make the BBI a bad thing.
Maybe that's why his letter leaked.
Not true. No, I raised 4 points. Of course, there was that issue of provincial administration, I concede. Yeah. But I also talked about the issue of making the process more consultative. In fact, that was point number 1.
And you don't feel you've been consulted, or people have been consulted enough?
Not me, the key political players.
Okay, real quick, before I read the tweets, who leaked your letter?
I don't know. Either, by the way, Mr. Rafael Tuju or Pogisio. the Senate Majority Leader. I shared with them that document in advance. Talk to Pogishi.
But she remind Kangata that he's on TV, he's not in parliament. There's no parliamentary privilege here.
There is none.
He might find himself in court.
No, I'm saying, I don't know.
Senator, what he should have done is go directly to the president.
Yes.
Why didn't he just take the letter to the president?
He was a whip.
He has a majority whip.
There's no, and I think there's a television drama series about the whip in Congress. I just forget the name. I don't know whether it's House of Cards or something like that. It's
House
on
of
Netflix.
Cards, yeah.
It's on Netflix. That guy is so powerful, and if you see the kind of machinations and the kind of maneuvers they make, they're the ones who determine who becomes what. Indeed, you recall when Obama first appointed someone to be his health secretary because his pet project was Obamacare, and he wanted someone who could drive that agenda. It was the whips in Congress who snookered that guy, because they ensured that that guy could not be nominated. A whip is a powerful position in parliament. It is the link between parliament and the executive, because the speaker is an outsider. The speaker can be impeached the next morning.
So they have access to the president anytime.
But the whip and the leader of majority, we used to imagine that these guys have breakfast with the president. That it turned out that he had no access. So he had to write a love letter to the president.
And leak it, or have it leaked.
No, can I tell you the reason why I wrote that letter? From my experiences, I realized that at times you need to keep a record. Because things will go wrong, people will say, you didn't do anything. I can tell you, during this fight for formula, I had written a secretive memo to my bosses. I told them, I'm fearful this thing will become very contentious. Do this and this before we reach this stage. Nothing was done until it became a burden upon me.
So, any regrets?
No, I'm happy. I'm telling you, I'm happy, because now, you see, look here. For the first time in my political history, I'm in a political group where I'm pushing an agenda that is beyond me. A certain political thing, philosophy, ideology that one can die for, which is de-ethnicizing Kenyan politics. De-ethnicizing. For the first time, I'm feeling passionate for a person who is not a Kikuyu. Of course, I've been in politics, supporting Kibaki Kikuyu, supporting Uhuru Kenyatta Kikuyu, but for the first time, I'm pushing an agenda of a non-Kikuyu. And the day, and God willing, we reach a stage where my community supports a non-Kikuyu, which we are doing now, William Ruto, we shall achieve, made this Kenya non-tribal.
Okay, let me get to
and
the
I'm happy
subject.
to be part of that process.
Okay. Bobby Buta on Twitter says, this alliance business is bad for Kenya because it is selfish and insensitive to the common Mwananchi at a time when Kenyans need solutions for the country and the economy. We should be hearing more of making of political party manifestos. Well, you know manifestos don't work anyway, right? Jeremiah Karaoke says, the evening starting on a humor platter. If Ruto and Raila join in one alliance, will the likes of Kangata keep talking about destinies versus hustlers? Sorry, dynasties versus hustlers, my bad. What will be the new mantra and slogan? We'll talk about if Raila joins now. Him and Ruto, what would you say?
Bottom-ups economics. Bottoms-up economics. By the way, my brother, look here. We have all those candidates who want to become president.
Yes.
Which presidential aspirant is talking about issues apart from William Ruto?
No,
we are the only one pushing an agenda.
And I think, Jeff,
an agenda.
I think you even hosted someone like Mukisa Kitui, who has got very fresh ideas on how to revive the economy.
Smart fella.
There are people like even Musalia Mudavadi. He still has some ideas from his experience in finance. Raila Odinga consistently talks about making Kenya take the path of Singapore. We cannot do exactly what Singapore did because times were different. But that is
41 versus 1.
That is you see, Kangata tells me today, and I'm actually very shocked that today he has seen the light, and for once he's supporting someone who's non-Kikuyu. First of all, that line of thought is warped. I voted for Mwai Kibaki back then, and it didn't matter that Mwai Kibaki was not Luo or that he was Kikuyu. So I'm glad that he's getting out of the miasma of ethnic political identity. Raila's consistent, and I wish you would even read some of the books. Unfortunately, you said you stopped listening to reggae because Raila started listening to reggae. That's how you miss on information. Is social democratic aspirations and views. In the last elections, it was captured in some very little book. And I remember that some of the authors of that book were people like David Ndii and other very eminent economists. Sets out his vision for an export-driven economy, reduction of this export-import substitution practices that we have had since independence. They are all there. People are talking issues. Okay. It's just that you don't want to listen.
Senator, let me ask you this. If Raila had said Nyachai Tosha, who would you have voted for?
Probably I would have voted for, because back then I was young, I was at the university. I would have gone with the team that I thought that had the aspirations of the youth better defined. At that point, if it was Nyachai building a coalition, a rainbow coalition with Mwai Kibaki, with Nyachai, with Kijana Wamalwa, with Ngilu, with Raila Odinga, I would have pursued that alliance.
Okay. Collins Bore, politics in this country has never been issue-based. Alliances are formed on the basis of numbers that you bring to the table for personal interest rather than empowering Kenyans. True. 2022 will be no different. Tribal groupings will still take shape. Senator Kangata, you agree? It's all about tribal groupings, tribal alliances. It's the numbers.
Hustler Nation has demolished that. For the first time, we have a conversation that is beyond tribes, that is on issues. We have been propagating issues like economic approach of bottoms up, making what you call a lean government that is not bureaucratic, a government where businesses, they are not over-regulated so that you create employment. For me, when I look at the philosophy of William Ruto, it reminds me of other political leaders who went into offices pushing for an agenda, a specific economic agenda. Persons like Margaret Thatcher in Britain, persons like Roosevelt, who founded the United Nations. Those are ideals. And when I see William Ruto, I'm so happy and proud of him that he is pushing an agenda beyond the tribe.
But so you don't need a lifetime to do these things. Even the successful stories that we are talking about, it took about 4 or 5 years or 6, 7 years for them to be, the ideas to be concretized and for them to be implemented. And I want to say this, and I know it is going to be very controversial. The Jubilee government has failed, particularly in ensuring that the 3 pillars are pursued properly. The political, the economic, and social pillar. We must accept that it has been a failure. And the president and Raila Odinga sat down to assess, why have we failed? And then they realized our politics is all wrong. And then they decided, let's fix it, so that whoever comes in will not be trapped by the bad politics that has affected us in the past. It is, you cannot argue otherwise, even if you blame it on COVID. Kangata's government, when they started, now they've bolted out, has failed. But because of bad politics, bad institutions, a bad system where the winner takes it all and other people are told to go to the street to eat tear gas. Okay. At least we are fixing it now.
Karis, BBI should engage the possibility of having nominated senators representing counties outside their regions.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah.
Would you switch?
Well,
Senator Kajwang in Murang'a and Senator Kangata in Homa Bay?
That was the constitutional framework in Uganda during, which president was it? Yeah, during one of the presidents.
It's a system in South Africa.
Yeah.
It used to be the system in the United Kingdom that you subscribe to a party. So if he's in the Hustlers Party, depending on the number of votes they get, then you are allocated. You are allocated a constituency.
Yeah.
And it was even there in Kenya. I remember Gigi Kariuki telling us that he was allocated a constituency.
Yeah.
So it was I think I like that idea. It will detribalize this country. It will move us away from just thinking of the fish, and it will help me to start appreciating the milk and the coffee, and Kangata likewise. But it's,
one of the ways they could have done,
it's an ideal situation.
One of the ways they could have done, maybe also to embed the issue-based politics, is to bring what we call proportional representation electoral system. because it tends to create what we call multi-party system. Because currently the incentives that have been the current constitutional electoral systems gives to the politicians is what we call a two-party system. Yeah, you have NASA versus Jubilee, because you are fighting for one trophy. But if they could have come up with what we call proportional representation system, maybe we could have achieved what that Audha is intended to.
By the way, Kunjiru Ambogo, MP Nyeri Town, is saying, why are you still in Senate? Why, if you oppose BBI, why are you still? What laws have you made? Which ones have you made about BBI yourself?
Of course, I've given you an example. I've pushed World Development Fund.
Yeah, which is on ice or somewhere in the deep freeze.
It is not my problem. It is his problem. He didn't fight for it when it came to the National Assembly.
You blame Kujiri?
Yeah, he's a member of parliament. I can tell you when that bill was read, no single member of parliament rose to support it.
Yeah, and also Wamushomba is not happy with you going to defend Moses. You got COVID last year or this year, right? You got it yourself.
Yeah,
and there you are defending.
Of course, you see me, I'm a lawyer, surely. You don't...
Business comes first.
But remember, when you asked him the question,
that does it make
transformed from a lawyer to a fiction writer.
Let me tell you why I went to defend him. I believe in human rights. I believe in democracy. When I see a system trying to negate human rights and democracy, to me that's a no.
And that is why,
that is a no.
And for me, I have no doubt
that arrest was not bona fide, it was mala fide, it was intended to achieve certain political
And that is why, with that very nice soundbite, why would you see Gideon Moi and Muho Kenyatta going to see Raila Odinga, who's recovering, and you start seeing darkness, and you start seeing malevolent forces, and you start seeing privilege and dynasties and all sorts of things? I think humanity, which you have said you subscribe to and you believe in, should also apply in this case.
No, you are right, by the way. I concede to the extent that Raila Odinga was sick. I pray for him, and I want him to be there to see us forming Hustler Nation. In fact, I also pray he joins us. He says Ruto Tosha. So for me, by the way, I wish Raila Odinga the best of health. By the way, he has been one of the people who have fought for multi-party democracy in this republic. Yeah. And which, for me, I'm still saying we need to support and entrench.
And if he stands for president and he doesn't say Ruto Tosha?
Of course, for me, I'm for Ruto because he has.
But are you ready? Are you ready for that one?
Of course, it's okay. The better, it's okay. That's politics.
Ruto can beat Raila?
Of course, he will do that morning.
Remember his opinion polls. Remember his opinion polls.
No.
If it's the same methodology, you'll get the same results.
It walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, swims like a duck. It's a duck. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I keep saying you guys are young. You're in your 40s, man. 42, 41?
Yeah.
Come on, man. They say we have no leadership in this country. Here it is right here. It's right here, gentlemen. Take it.
Yeah,
it's your time.
You are right. All the major aspirants for presidential candidate, we go for the youngest.
Good.
Thank you.
Let's have another conversation.
You have said good.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bay Senator Moses Kajwa, Moranga Senator Irungu Kangata, talking to us about the state of our nation going forward. Keep saying, folks, we got to keep talking. The moment we stop talking, it's the moment we start fighting, and we don't want to go down that slippery slope. Once again, Ramadan Kareem to all our Muslim brothers and sisters. Thanks so much for joining us. Those three letters on the keyboard, they follow each other. JKL. Good night, good luck. God bless Kenya.